Let me start here by telling you who I am, who I serve, and what we are going to be talking about today. My name is Sage Rountree. I know that sounds like a made-up yoga teacher name, but it is my name. I am coming to you from Western North Carolina. I'm in the mountains right now. And out here is a gorgeous view over to Virginia and Tennessee. It's a pretty day in the low 60s here in the high country of North Carolina. I am the founder of a virtual yoga studio called Comfort Zone Yoga that focuses on yoga teacher development. Quite specifically, I am here to help folks from their 200 onward. I also direct yoga teacher trainings at the studio I have co-owned for 15 years now, called Carborough Yoga Company in the center of North Carolina. But my work is especially focused on yoga teachers from the 200-hour level and onward. Because often I find that y'all get to the end of your 200, and I certainly got to the end of my 200 23 years ago, feeling like I had more questions than answers, and that while I knew a lot more about yoga than I had before I started the program, I wasn't sure I knew that much more about teaching yoga than when I started the program. So, what I share with you on these free calls at Comfort Zone Yoga and in the community at Comfort Zone Yoga, on my podcast called Yoga Teacher Confidential, on my YouTube channel at Sage Rountree, no letter D, in all of my content across social media, is all the things that I have figured out for myself and then taught to other people over the last 23 years that I have been teaching yoga. And what we are going to talk about today is how you can plan your class in 15 minutes or less so that you don't have this increasing anxiety as the weekend goes on, that you know you need to sit down and start planning your lessons for the week, but you feel either like you're going to be spending hours and hours planning the class, or you're going to be spending hours and hours planning the class, show up and have to throw your plans out the window when you get there. So I've developed a system that you can read about in my book called The Art of Yoga Sequencing that is a modular chunking approach to leading yoga classes. That's part of what we'll be talking about today. More of what we'll be talking about today is this mindset shift that those of you who are feeling like you might be repeating too much can explain to the rest of us how much repetition is helping your students. And those of you who are trying to recreate the wheel and plan a brand new yoga sequence every single class and a brand new lesson plan every single class can be called into center, where the rest of us are repeating mostly over time with a little bit of intentional variety. So I was laughing with some of the folks in my mentorship program, which is called Mastering the Art of Yoga Sequencing, a mentorship membership, or because it is food themed and it is delicious, about how this call really only needs to be about 15 seconds long. So here's the real mic drop moment. How to plan your yoga class in 15 minutes or less. You just repeat the same lesson plan you did last week. Boom, mic drop. That is how you do it. The secret is it's never going to be the same class. Even if you were teaching that style of hot yoga where you would have paid $10,000 for your yoga teacher training just to memorize a script and then repeat that script verbatim in every class, even if you had that level of consistency in your lessons, there still would be variety that emerges naturally. Where you stand in the room is going to be a little bit different. The students who are present are always going to be a little bit different. And everybody who has already experienced this sequence with you, even if you're repeating a script, is going to be in a slightly different place from moment to moment. So your class is never the same, just like Epictetus, I think it was, the Greek philosopher who said, you never step in the same river twice. Same story for you and your yoga students. So don't feel guilty about repeating and don't feel afraid to repeat. Even when you start to repeat, there's still going to be some natural variety baked into your yoga classes, dependent on the seasons, who's present, your energy level, and so on. So let's unpack a little bit more about, okay, so how do we repeat? What are we repeating? And how much variety do we start to put in? And by the end of this call, I hope that you will feel comfortable walking this middle path between rigidly planning, writing everything out, feeling like you have to control every single variable in your yoga class, and showing up and totally winging it on the fly when you get there. So let me talk to you about this 4 chunk structure, this modular sequencing. And if you like what you hear here, you can pick up my book called The Art of Yoga Sequencing anywhere books are sold, or better yet, order it from your local library, because that means that once you are done reading it, other yoga teachers will get a chance to read it as well. I'll also be sharing as we go on some resources that I have for you at Comfort Zone Yoga that demonstrate this modular approach so that you can practice it in your own classes, repeat it, repeat it, repeat it, repeat it in your own classes because the variety will naturally emerge, and then start to swap things out. So, if you've heard me give versions of sequencing talks before, you might have heard me use a few different analogies. There are really 3 that I think apply here especially well. One is there are some books that they sell for children that are like a choose your own adventure monster book or a choose your own doll book. It is a perforated cardboard set of 3 or 4 chunks, and you can look at the entire crocodile or the entire elephant or the entire lion. And each of those has its head, its torso, its legs, and its feet and tail. So those are the 4 chunks of these monsters. But the fun in playing with a book like this is that you can start to flip the pages in different orientations. So, yes, you could have an entire elephant, but you could also create a creature that had the head of an elephant and the body of a crocodile, and then the legs of the lion and the tail of, I was going to say giraffe, but I don't know that giraffes actually have tails. The tail of a donkey, which is an especially adorable tail. So that would be a way that you could be thinking in terms of either chunks that all go together or starting to create hybrids that don't, but that create something that's really kind of fun and funky. The gendered version of this is the dress up doll book that is divided into pieces where you'll have the hat, the top, the skirt, and the shoes. And it could be a cowgirl on one page and a ballerina on the next, and a princess on the next, and a business executive on the next. And you could start to pick and choose how you're dressing your doll. You could give her the cowgirl's hat, but the business executive's blazer, and the ballerina's tutu, and the construction worker's boots. And that's how you would flip those. So when we're thinking in terms of these 4 quarters of class, these 4 chunks that go together to create a yoga class for you, I want you to be thinking like, oh, this is a chunk that works really well as an opening or warm up. This is a chunk that works well as a standing sequence. This is a chunk that happens mostly down on the mat. And this is a chunk that is a finishing part of class. The capsule wardrobe approach is another one I sometimes describe. It's having this limited run of pieces of clothing. Say you're packing for a trip, you would pack a capsule wardrobe. It would have a lot of basics that you would then dress up with accessories to add flair. And those accessories could be scarves and jewelry and the shoes and the handbag and the belt or the briefcase, all these elements that you can add visual interest with while still repeating the same basic structure of the capsule wardrobe. Finally, the third analogy that I love, because if you know anything about me, it's probably that I love a food analogy because I love food, is the restaurant menu, the prefix menu, where you would sit down for a 3 or 4 course menu and you would choose from the appetizers, the mid-course entrees, the main entree, the heaviest protein, and then the dessert. And if you are going to eat the full meal, you'll wind up with something from each of those categories. Just like when you're going to construct your yoga class, you wind up with a thing from each of these opening and warm up, standing pose sequence, mat work sequence, and finishing pose sequence chunks. Same thing when you go to order off the prefix menu. But if you are creating online content or just serving yourself a yoga snack, or you're just teaching a short class for some reason, which sometimes happens, sometimes you can go into restaurants and order just 1 course off of the menu. I love this analogy because my husband's side hustle is he owns a French restaurant in Durham, North Carolina, and they have this kind of prefix menu. So you could order anything off of the prefix, which rotates across the seasons, across the week. You could order any of those things as a standalone item, or you can order a la carte. So all of these are analogies that I hope work for your brain as you start to think about sitting down to plan your class. Because some yoga teachers fall into this trap of trying to dress themselves completely wholesale to like create the cotton and weave the cotton. It would be like planting seeds to grow the cotton, to harvest the cotton, to pick the cotton, to pick the seeds out of the cotton, to spin it into thread, to weave the thread into material, to plan a pattern, to cut it, to sew it, and so on and so on, to construct a class. We're not thinking at that level of detail. Instead, I hope that you start to think about, oh, it's just a shirt. Like I don't have to go and plant a field just to begin to create a shirt. I just pick something off the rack. Same story here. Once you start to think in this approach, the food analogy works as well. It's kind of like getting a meal kit where you go to the grocery store, to the Wegmans, and you buy the salad kit, and everything that goes into the salad is already in there, and you just put it together. Same thinking, except you're the one creating the kit for yourself. It's like when you do your meal prep for the week. So I'm hoping that some of these analogies are resonating with you. When you start to think in terms of these 4 chunks, then you are really cooking with gas because you can start to create your own meal planning kit, stock your own pantry, create a recipe box, fill your wardrobe, pack your suitcase for your capsule wardrobe. And then all you need to do is pick and choose from among these preset sequences. And these are sequences that you can repeat for weeks and weeks and weeks. And then when you feel like something is ready to go off to the dry cleaners and rest in the closet for a little while, you'll pull something else in to fill it. And here's how you find that best balance between consistency and variety in your yoga class, where your students have familiar sequences. It's not a completely new sense of style week to week or a completely different restaurant cuisine week to week. There is a consistent through line for them, and they get to see themselves progress because they're not all in their thinking brain. They get to drop into their body because the sequence is not all exciting and new and fresh week to week. So when we start to think about ourselves as yoga teachers, not as the heroes of the yoga class, but instead as the guides. We are not Luke Skywalker or Han Solo. We are Obi-Wan Kenobi or Yoda. We are there to center the students, to celebrate their agency, and to help them feel better connected and closer to liberation at the end of class than when the class started. When we start to see ourselves in this role of guide, then we realize, oh, some of these things that I have been doing were really operating out of my own yoga teacher brain and my own ego instead of operating in the highest service to my students. But we'll come back to mindset shifts in the next segment here. For now, let me pull up these quick flashcards just so you can start to think about how your class goes in chunks. If you have been following my work for a while or want to like collect the complete Sage Rountree bibliography, I have a book called Everyday Yoga. It's got a red cover and it is spiral bound so that you can really easily flip through it. It's not to the point of being perforated chunk by chunk, but that one is color coded in ways that make these chunks really clear and obvious. So please check out Everyday Yoga if you get a chance to do that. I might have said Lifelong Yoga. That's a different book of mine, but the one that you want to model this is Everyday Yoga. So what you'll see if you pick up a copy of Everyday Yoga or The Art of Yoga Sequencing is that this first chunk of your class is roughly the first 15 minutes. It's the centering, the welcome, of course, the centering, and then the warm-up movements that you give your students. It's got some attention to breath, maybe some gentle movement, some intention setting. All of this happens in that first quarter or so of class. Then the second chunk is the more active chunk of your class. If you teach a class that has standing, it's going to be the standing poses plus any balance work. If you are accustomed to offering sun salutations in your class, they go as part of this chunk. If you teach a more floor-based class or chair-based class, this isn't going to apply as literally as standing poses, but maybe it will. Or maybe you're thinking, oh, sure, after the warm-up comes the active portion of class. And then we come back down and we have more floor-based stuff or more chair-based stuff. And in this third chunk of class, we are focusing either/or on the core, or on the hips in general. The shoulders, the spine come along for the ride. But by the time we get to this third course of class, this is that heavy protein. Oh, a brain, awesome. By the time we come down, we're getting into the hearty stuff, the real nourishing part of the practice, in part because there have been preparatory movements, not building us toward a peak pose, which I will deconstruct for you in a moment, but preparatory movements that just mean we're going to get the most out of our core work and our hip work when we come down to the mat. And then, of course, the last quarter or so of your class is the finishing. This can be any finishing poses that you do, a final relaxation, meditation, breath work, everything you do toward the very end of your class. I bet if you start to think about the classes that you have taught so far this year, you do see these more macro structures starting to emerge. Even if you were almost planning them at the pose level, there are groups for your class, for all the poses in class. And you can be like, oh, sure, that was the part before we came up to standing. And that was the part when we were standing. And that was the part when we came back down, but we were maybe one level up off the floor, either seated or kneeling. And then there was the part where we were fully down on the floor, either prone or supine on our fronts or backs before coming into final relaxation, meditation, breath work, and closing. Once you start to see things at this level, then you can start to think at that higher level when it comes time to plan your next class. You can think, oh, I'm going to serve a Western omelet for dinner, instead of thinking, oh, I need to get eggs and peppers and onions and I'm not even quite sure what goes into a Western omelet, but I hope you get the picture. There are all these elements that are the features of a Western omelet, but you don't have to think of them at that ingredient level. You're thinking more like, oh, sure, these are all the pieces that go into it, because Western omelet is this set thing that exists as a chunk in my own brain. I bet you think this way about your wardrobe planning as well. I'm a huge fan of two-piece sets. You'll see me wearing them a lot. I'm wearing one today. I love that because it takes some of the guesswork out of dressing myself in ways that are very useful. And that reduction of mental load when it comes time to dress yourself, to belabor this analogy, is what makes you a more present teacher for your students. Because if we center our students, as I hope we do, we want to help them with as much gusto as we can muster. We want to help them with as much attention and seeing them and being focused on them as we can find. When you are constantly creating the wheel afresh every class, or operating at the ingredient level, at the pose level, you will be so busy in your own thinking brain that you will not have the bandwidth, the mental capacity to really see your students and adapt to what they need moment to moment. When instead you begin to trust the repetition of sequences over time, when you change no more than 25%, no more than one of the 4 chunks of what you've been teaching in class over time, week to week, all of a sudden you are in that familiar and embodied space where you can help your students better because you can see them. And they don't have to think so hard because they remember all the things that you have had to say to them in the past weeks, and everything just flows so much more sweetly. So those are your 4 quarters of class. I would love to show you an example of a couple of mindset shifts that will help you. And then we will move into an example of how this might play out in a real class. So as I said, there's this call. I feel like my work, especially in the last few years, if I've really homed in on working with folks like y'all after their 200-hour yoga teacher training and stepping into their full confidence as yoga teachers, is this call to center. So you are either planning too much or you're completely winging it. And either one, whether you're the type A or the type B yoga teacher, either one will serve their students better if you come to center and find that right balance between stira and sukha, between effort and ease, between the type A and the type B. So this middle path is the first mindset shift. The second mindset shift is to understand that repetition is the key to learning. The joke I always make here is repetition is the key to learning. Repetition is the key to learning. Repetition is the key to learning. And that's so true. I've alluded to it as we've been going on so far, but I almost can't say it enough. I almost can't repeat it enough that your students are not going to be bored the way you think they are. I hate to say this. Well, I don't hate to say this. You may not like to hear this, but your students are not thinking about you as much as you think they are. I know you know this. I know your mother taught you this. Nobody is thinking about you the same way that you are thinking about yourself. They are thinking about which side is left and which side is right, and where are my quadriceps, and did I answer that email, and what's for dinner later, and I kind of need to use the bathroom. What's the vibe here? Is it okay to leave the yoga class and come back? These are the fluctuations of your students' minds over the course of your yoga class. It's not, she said that last week. Even if it is, she said that last week. It's like, why is it just now landing with me? You have probably had this experience, and you can let me know in the chat or hit a react button if you have. But the longer you've been teaching, the more times this has probably happened to you, where a student comes up to you after class and says, wow, it really blew my mind when you said X, Y, Z, do this action in triangle pose, or see if your exhales can be a full release. It could be something very deep. It could be something very minor. And when they tell you that, you just smile and nod and say, I'm so glad that landed with you today. And internally, you're like, hee. I say that every single time. Or it's the very single thing that you feel really tired of hearing yourself say that your students most need to hear. I hear this all the time. And it's because your students are processing maybe 15%, 20% of what you tell them. They're going to need to hear things 7 or 8 times before they really land. And even if this is something they have heard 700 or 800 times from you over the decades, it still is useful. It's still a reminder. I mean, when you go to take a yoga class, probably still appreciate when your teacher reminds you to breathe. It's not just throwing darts at the dartboard. You're on target every time when you're saying things like that. And your students need to hear it over and over and over again. So the middle path is middle, but maybe it's slightly to the left lane or the right lane of middle, where we lean a little bit more toward repetition than toward variety and change. Okay. So a couple of other mindset shifts. We've got the middle path. We've got the repetition is the key to learning. The next shift I want you to think about is that peak poses are not the best way to plan your class if you want to offer your students balanced movement. And peak poses are also going to suck all of your energy by increasing your planning time. So if you go onto Instagram when it's time to plan your class and see some sexy pose or transition and think, I'm going to work back from there, you are creating a whole lot of mental stress, and you are also sending a message to your students that what matters is building to some accomplishment in yoga, right? Building to some aesthetic accomplishment in yoga. And I would argue that is not the goal. The goal is liberation. The goal is connection. The goal is union. The goal is not to get your foot behind your head or lift your feet up off the ground in crow pose or any of these externally measurable achievements. If you agree with me that the goal is to help your students toward liberation and connection, then offering them a balanced meal, a balanced movement diet is probably going to get them there faster than shooting for one target that maybe half the folks in your class wouldn't be hitting anyway. So we'll let go of the idea that we need to work backward from a peak pose. Now, I'm not saying you can't teach this way. You can, and if your students are liking it and your classes are full, well, something is clearly working both for you and for them, and you can keep it up. But if you feel like there is a different way, what if we shifted from this concept of peak pose sequencing to balanced sequencing, so that we are covering every plane of movement over the course of a class? And I haven't uttered the words 642 or serve method at this point yet in this call, but those are 2 of my frameworks. You can come read about them in the zone or on my YouTube channel. There's a whole lot of content around these concepts. The 642 is the the structure that underlies the Art of Yoga Sequencing book and the sequences I present in my movement library, in my yoga class planning membership called the Prep Station. So you can come and learn about those. But the 6 is the 6 moves of the spine: forward, back, side to side, round and round. The 4 are the 4 lines of the legs: front, back, inside, and outside. And the 2 are the 2 core modes: stabilization and articulation. I always have to do those when I describe them. And if we think of those as like the macronutrients of balanced movement, we are going to be serving our students really well over time. Instead of building toward a peak pose, which is more like giving them some like crazy showy dessert, or some like one really cool appetizer, but it's not a balanced diet. It's going all in on some high concept delivery, and it's not serving them what they really need for their day-to-day movement dining. I hope you're vibing with these food analogies. I can help them. Okay, so if we're dropping the idea of peak pose sequencing, what are we going to fill that time with? What are we going to do instead? I suggest that this last shift, this 4th mindset shift, is once we moved away from peak pose sequencing, what if we thought instead about featured pose sequencing? This is like if you go to, here I am in North Carolina, we have a fantastic food shed. July is tomato season, and many of the local restaurants will have like tomato heavy menus over the course of July and on into August. There's even like a tomato festival at our farmers market. So that is the featured vegetable of July. What if your class had a featured pose that you see in various segments of class, various chunks of class, and that they get to explore in different ways, in different orientations to gravity, approaching it dynamically, approaching it statically, to hold and commit to, giving it a quarter turn relative to gravity. If you're wondering what I'm talking about, think of a shape like downward facing dog and how we see that across the canon of yoga asana, across the list of potential things that we can do with our bodies. We see downward facing dog, but we also see boat pose, and we see legs up the wall, and we see the half lift from forward fold. All of those are the same shape. They're core stabilization and hip flexion. That's what it is. And if we're going in the case of downward facing dog or doing a really killer boat pose with arms up overhead, then we have shoulder flexion as well. So this is the featured pose that's probably already present in your class if these are poses that you regularly have on your class menu. I love to take this shape and then give it a few turns relative to gravity over the course of the class. So that might mean we do it standing, we do it reclining, we do it from hands and knees, we do it side lying when possible. And there are a whole lot of shapes that you can see echoed over and over in various relationships to gravity. My favorite one to play with is tree pose. We're about to go a little bit deeper into that, but another really good one would be your pigeon pose, where you've got your figure 4 leg, see, matching set, where you've got your figure 4 leg and there's some space. You've got your leg externally rotated, abducted, knee flexion, hip flexion, and you could do that from hands and knees, like as a hip mobilization exercise. You can do that as a standing pigeon. You can do that as a pigeon forward fold. You can do that as a pretty spicy arm balance. And this is the featured pose. It's not a peak pose because we're not building to it. We're just seeing it featured as a motif that is woven through the class. When we do this, we are offering our students not one mountain to climb to a singular peak pose, but we're offering them repetition within the class itself. So we get this chance to explore and embody the shape over and over the course of the class and see it in different orientations, to have slightly different challenges. It feels really cohesive. It feels like you put a lot of time into planning, even though this can be an outfit or a recipe that came straight out of your wardrobe or your recipe box that you have been playing with over the years, over time, for weeks on end. It is not boring. It is deeply comforting to your students when you start to teach like this. All right. So let's take a quick look together at what we could do with this in the context of looking at a side bending tree pose. Yes, it is the greatest hits lesson plan that you may know and love. If you don't know and love it yet, you're about to get a crash course in it. Our February call in the zone here is an unpacking of the greatest hits lesson plan. And there we might even do a little bit of follow along movement together. Let me pull up my screen and I will show you where it is, what it looks like, and how you can use it. Okay, so this is the URL. I think you can see it in the agenda. If you can't, yes, you can. So if you look at the top where it says live demo, you should be able to hover over that and then click right into it. But I can also just drop this in the chat just in case that is not working well for you. Et voila. Okay. This is the back pocket lesson plan that I use when I want to serve everybody a balanced diet. This is your mom's spaghetti, right? Like you just know, all right, I'm going to do the spaghetti and the salad and the garlic bread, and like everything is covered. All the bases are covered. It has a featured shape of tree pose as a side bend. And we do that shape on our backs in the warm up. We do that shape standing as part of a modified sun salutations sequence that I teach. It's a two-legged version of standing side bending tree pose. Then we do it as and now everybody, let's do tree pose segment, a balance segment after the flow segment. We come down to the mat and we do it depending on the class, on the students, on their needs, and on what we've been doing over the course of the month. We might do 1, 2, or 3 sections down on the floor that involve this as well. So that we'll do it from a kneeling position, we'll do it from a belly down position as almost a half frog pose. And each of these is taking this same featured pose, turning it in relationship to gravity and giving our students a really delicious experience with it. So what you'll see here is walking you through what the poses are. There's a full follow along, 1 hour, 8-minute class. I see 108 as a yoga teacher, that you can follow along, see how this feels in your own body, because it's always important for you to taste things before you serve them to your students. I give you some ways that you can adapt this to make it spicier or sweeter, depending on your student population, and some ways that you can iterate it over time. Because y'all, this is how you plan your class in 15 minutes or less. This is how you plan your month in 15 minutes or less. You're not afraid to repeat, but you add in just enough variety that you feel intellectually stimulated. Your students feel like, oh, this is building on what happened last week. But if they drop in, there's still a cohesiveness to the lesson plan in and of itself. Further down, I give you number of variations with video demo, a whole call we had in my mentorship membership on this, and a whole nother call here in the zone about all this. So when you come through to this and you click through, you'll also see this PDF, which is going to show you how this plays out in chunks. The first chunk, centering and warm up. Here you see Sid, my wonderful model, in the side bending tree pose on his back. And the words here are talking you through how you might cue this for your students or cue this for yourself. Then in the second chunk, we're in the standing segment of class. I do a modified version of sun salutations that has a lot less up and down. Instead of stepping forward from downward facing dog into a split stance, we step back from a chair pose. And that makes things a whole lot easier and inclusive for almost everybody in your student population because there's a lot less positional shifting. Then we come into tree pose. Here's my beautiful model, Catherine, in this tree pose, and we layer in the side bend. When we come down to mat work, you might remember I said your mat work will typically divide up into either and slash or core work and hip work. This is an example of core work. Here's my gorgeous model, Kevin, doing this side bending tree pose. If he took his hand even more out over his ear, then it's going to be that real side bendy version of it. And this feels like spicy core work. Then you could come into head to knee flow, which is hip work. And if you are on my email newsletter list, you will see I put up today a YouTube follow along video for this very head to knee flow. Then we come back into the shape, belly down, as six moves of the spine, prone, one leg, this delicious side bending tree from your belly, which can feel like heaven on earth. I know that some of my students find this is the best ever. And we move that into finishing relaxation and so on. So please come through, avail yourself of these resources because I think they will help you plan your class really quickly. Use this as your model. Start to think about what are your own unique chunks of class. Like how many warm-ups could you categorize and catalog for yourself? How many standing segments do you typically use across the week or across your teaching year? How many mat sequences can you come up with? Once you start to assemble your wardrobe or develop your recipe box, then you never need to spend more than 15 minutes planning your classes again, because it's a question of looking in your closet or opening your Google Doc or your Google Sheet or your Notion database or your comfort zone yoga class planning prep station or your book, The Art of Yoga Sequencing, or my YouTube channel, and thinking, okay, here are the pieces I'm going to put together. And then you just sequence them, teach them, and don't just teach them once and teach another 4 the next week. You can teach those again and again and again, and at least 4 times, if not more. I think what you'll find when you start to lean into this is that 4 might not be enough. And you might wind up doing 6-week cycles or 8-week cycles, but you won't need to have more than 6 to 10 of each of these segments or chunks of class in your lesson planning collection, in your catalog, whether that is software or literally some of my students like to use an actual recipe box, with the cards like grandma used to have and copy if somebody asked her for her recipe. So however your thinking brain works with it, 6 to 10 of each of these is going to keep you cooking for the rest of your teaching career. That's not to say that you shouldn't learn more sequences, that you shouldn't evolve as a teacher, but I think that repetition is going to get you a lot farther than constantly chasing novelty and the next new and exciting thing. That attraction to the next new and exciting thing comes maybe from your self-doubt as a yoga teacher. It comes maybe from your own yoga student's brain, because you've been practicing so long, you get really interested in the things that bodies can do, and you love to learn from new teachers. So you then think, oh, my students must feel the same way. Y'all, they probably don't. They probably have not been practicing yoga for 25 years like you have. They probably don't have bodies that are as naturally flexible as yours, or the dance background that you have, or the habit of practicing yoga asana 5 to 7 times a week that you do. Your students, this may be their only movement for the week. It doesn't need to be fresh and exciting. It needs to be nourishing. It needs to be comforting. It needs to be consistent. So where are you going to find these sequences? In your own head. I challenge you, if you've got some time right after this call, open a fresh document, open up your journal, and start listing, oh, how much do I actually know? I think you'll find if you do this brain dump exercise that you've got a lot more already in your head than you think, and that you can then assemble a nice menu to serve for the rest of the calendar year. We've got 5 weeks to go in the calendar week. You might be taking a week off around the December holidays. So 4 times, I encourage you to try teaching the same recipe 4 weeks in a row. It will be different every class. You don't even have to change a single thing in it. It's going to feel a little different in every class. And in December, teaching tip, in my class, I always do annually the December to Remember Shavasana event. It's like modeled on the Lexus December to Remember sales event, because we're barraged with those commercials here in the US. Every week in December, we have extra Shavasana. So it's almost like an advent calendar for rest, because as we hit the end of the year, people are overstimulated. They are overexposed to advertisements, to shopping, to germs. They really need the downtime. So you can just vary the Shavasana length over the course of the rest of the year, and your students will feel nourished. They will feel supported. They will feel the comfort of the familiar, just like you're about to go and watch the same holiday movies that your that you've watched every year, your students want that same kind of familiarity from their yoga class. So find these sequences in your head. And then if and when you want to get some out of my head, I have several ways to share them with you. One, of course, is the book, The Art of Yoga Sequencing, that you can pick up wherever books are sold or order from your local library. Another is my YouTube channel, where I have been dripping out these movement sequences, these follow along sequences. I'm not trying to be a yoga channel per se, I'm a yoga teacher channel on YouTube, but I also know that part of being a yoga teacher is part of being a yoga student. So the idea behind these sequences is they are for you to follow along with, and then once you have really digested them, to take and share with your own students. But all of the sequences that you'll find on my YouTube also exist in the yoga class prep station. And there's a link for that. If you click the where to find sequences at the top of the screen, or if you're watching this in the replay, I'll have it in the video description underneath. This is my new-ish membership. It's only $39 a month. And when you join the yoga class prep station, you get a whole library full of follow along videos. It's 140 and counting at this point, videos like you will find in the Greatest Hits lesson plan, where you can practice them yourself. You will find coming soon by the end of the year, them fully annotated like you see in the Greatest Hits lesson plan. So you can copy and paste once you're in the prep station. You can copy and paste into your own recipe to take to class. You can then tweak however you like. I also give folks some extra lagniappe, some teaching tips. Every month, there's like a new featured sequence or something from the vault to try. There is a theme seed, the germ of a yoga class message, an inspiring message, or a piece of yoga philosophy. These are key to my books, the Teaching Yoga Beyond the Poses and Teaching Yoga Beyond the Poses Volume 2, but they're fresh. And then a teaching tip, something easy that you can do 5 minutes or less to level up your teaching in the next week or month. Finally, in the prep station, every month we have a live call. It's called the monthly snack and chat. I administer a little snack. We do maybe 15 minutes of movement that I guide so that you get to be the student and be nourished. And then we sit around and chat about what's going on in our teaching lives, because we can feel pretty siloed as yoga teachers. You know, you probably went through a yoga teacher training with a cohort of friends, and it felt very communal and almost like being back in high school or college. And then you kind of get spit out the other end, and you may not get a chance to interact with your colleagues. And if you are interacting with them, I'm not calling them your competition, but they are your colleagues, like at the studio. I know you support each other, but you might also be, you know, interested in teaching the same time slots or sharing the same students. It can be a really refreshing relief to get a chance to fellowship with people who are outside of your local market and talk through situations that happen in your class that you might not want to talk through with folks who are local to you. So that is another feature in the prep station. I would absolutely love to have you in there. This is a great time to sign up because, as I say, I am actively working on annotating all the sequences in there. And if you want to taste, poke around on YouTube and you'll find some options. All right. Let me pull us into a Q&A period. If you have a question, I invite you to raise your hand using the Q feature or go into the chat and drop a Q&A. You go to chat and go all the way down to the very bottom and tap the Q&A button to ask a question. I will not flatter myself to think that that was so coherent that nobody has questions. Don't be shy to ask a question. As you're thinking about the questions, I'll point out that everybody here on the live call is already a member of the Zone, which is my free side at Comfort Zone Yoga. Comfort Zone Yoga hosts my 300-hour yoga teacher training, and the prep station is kind of a support for that. But then it also has that 6-month mentorship membership called It has a lot of specialization courses, so you can specialize in teaching yin yoga, restorative yoga, balance, which is a fantastic course, if I do say so myself, teaching trauma-sensitive yoga. There will be some new modules coming out on that side of things in 2026. Teaching yoga nidra, I think, is next up on the docket. So that is all the paid offers inside the Zone. But in the Zone proper, we have a lot of ungated spaces, a lot of free spaces. Calls like this are offered in there. We have an asynchronous chat. I would love for y'all to come in and be active. So if you realize after you go and do the brain dump exercise and start to get all of your sequences collated and collected that you have questions about that, come through to the ask a question space in the zone and ask me, because I would love to answer those for you. I would love for your peers to answer them for you too. When I see questions come through, I do always weigh in on them, but I typically give them 24 to 48 hours before I come in, because I try not to be the loudest voice in that room. I think we actually have more to learn from our peers than from the leader a lot of the time. And I am now in my 23rd year of teaching, maybe more removed from some of those struggles that folks have straight out of their 200 with so many hours of teaching under my belt. I may not be the best person to help you, and your peers can in there. So when you come to ask a question, make sure you also chime in on an answer to somebody else's question. I am going to believe you if nobody is asking a question right now that I have covered this subject maybe so much that you're feeling like you've got a lot to process. So let me start to wrap up. Emily, yes, hi friend. Emily came and took teaching restorative in Carborough. So let me pull this up. I'm happy to detour and answer this. She says, I think you shared before that you don't use music. Absolutely not, Emily. I used to. I used to use music, and I used it with a lot of energy going into it, a lot of time collating my playlists, a lot of care going into like matching the vibe and the portion of class, and it became pretty exhausting. There are also all kinds of legal reasons why not to use music, and I have a whole podcast episode. I'm just going to pop in the chat. sagerountree.com/podcast is where you can find all of these, or on your favorite podcast player. Look for Yoga Teacher Confidential. That's the name of my podcast. It's also up on my YouTube channel, so you can find it there. And there are all kinds of legal reasons not to use music in class. They include that you need to be paying licensing fees to not one but three agencies: CSAC, AMI, and or ASCAP and BMI. Unless you're using royalty-free music. It can be a lot for students. Everybody's going to have their own opinion about the music that you play. And since a lot of my career is focused on teaching yoga to athletes and literally like taking the yoga to the athletes, I often have very little say about yoga, about what music is playing there. Sometimes we do yoga to Chris Stapleton, which I actually kind of like. Sometimes we do yoga to the sound of weights dropping. Sometimes we do yoga to heavy metal, because that's what's happening in the weight room. So if you are interested in hearing more about music, come through and watch that video on YouTube or listen to that episode of Yoga Teacher Confidential. I think there are all kinds of arguments in every direction, and maybe that could be the topic of a conversation here at Comfort Zone Conversations next year. Marilyn is asking a question as well. I'm used to doing my second section if I do a core round and lesson planning as core work. I noticed you do this as the third section. I wondered if there was a specific reason. Marilyn, that is such a good question. And the answer, to be perfectly honest, is no. You could absolutely do your core work before you come up to standing. That would probably give your students a different experience of the standing poses in ways that could be really fruitful and interesting. And here's another way that you could vary this recipe. You could keep the same greatest hits lesson plan, but teach the core before you come up to standing. After, maybe teach it as written for 2 weeks, and then teach the core before you come up to standing for 2 more weeks, and see what happens. See what kind of feedback you get from your students. Ask your students. You are allowed to ask your students how it felt. Did they like it? Did they not? Ask your students, how did that feel? I think that that could be a really fruitful and interesting way to introduce some variety while maintaining the consistency. So you would have all the same poses. They would just be presented in a slightly different order, like eating dessert a little bit earlier. And that could be really, really cool for your students. So I could see a really good physiological argument for doing core before standing. I just always feel like, sprinkle in a little bit on the way back down. Great question. Not too late to ask a question if you've got any other questions. I'm going to take Emily's off. Clear. All right, then I am going to click through and ask you guys a question. What's your next step? What are you going to do from here? If I was typing this all over again, I would add next step number one option would be brain dump. Go in and get all of your existing sequences out of your head. And it's also fine to keep doing what you're doing or keep thinking about it. But I think the best action for you, besides starting to get all of these sequences out of your head and into paper or software, is for you to begin repeating them with less variation than you might currently be doing. And if you were one of the folks who in the poll at the beginning said, I repeat my class, but I'm starting to feel guilty that I'm not changing things up for my students. If your students keep coming back to your class, that is the single biggest vote of confidence that you can get from them. They're coming back because they liked what you did the last time. And it's going to be destabilizing for them if things are drastically different from week to week. So do not be afraid. Do not fall into the trap of trying to prove your creativity by changing things all the time. Instead, do give your students what they came to your restaurant for. Do maintain that sense of personal style and your capsule wardrobe from week to week. Because if you showed up in Chanel one week and punk rock, like laddered tights and safety pins the next week, they're going to wonder what's going on with you. They want for you to have a consistent brand across your classes. That is all I have got for y'all today. I would love to see you in the space, come through and use the space. Give me some feedback when we clock out of this call, and I will look forward to seeing you on the next call, which is an annual year in review. And you're not allowed to stay quiet next time. Next time, I want to hear what your big teaching wins have been in this past year.